morning, everybody. Welcome to the NPERS State County Pre-Retirement Webinar. My name is Jeremy Calcara. I am the training specialist here at NPERS, and with me today is Heather Critchfield-Smith, the marketing and communications specialist and the manager of the education services team here at NPERS. Between the two of us, you get about over a dozen years working with your retirement plans. I say it that way on purpose to make myself sound a little bit smarter. Heather's been here for 11 years, and I just celebrated my 2-year anniversary. Or I just had my 2-year. I didn't like nobody brought me a cake or anything. But we're happy that you're here today. Just a little bit about myself. Overall, I've been with the state of Nebraska for about just over 3 years. Before that, I was in underwriting for an insurance company for almost a decade. I won't mention which one, but they are known to brag about being like a good neighbor. Before that, I was a youth pastor, so you might notice I tend to get a little bit preachy sometimes about retirement. I hope you will forgive me for that. And then I'm also a dad. There will be a lot of dad jokes today. I apologize for none of them. I have 4 boys and 1 really worn out teenage daughter, and so the rule is if I tell a joke and it gets unanimous eye rolls in the van, it goes in the program. So you're going to hear a lot of my corny bad jokes today. I do want to just get started here with some housekeeping. First, you will probably notice that you are muted and your cameras aren't on. This isn't because we don't want to see your faces. It's just because Webex tends to run at the speed of the person with the lowest bandwidth. So one way to help with that is to have all cameras shut off and mics muted, except for the presenters. There's nothing wrong with your system. This is the way we have it set up. Next, everyone should have received our presentation materials in an email leading up to this event. These documents will allow you to follow along with our presentation today. You should have also had the opportunity pop up to open these documents when you logged on today. If you don't have that email and didn't open the documents when you logged in, Heather went ahead and put that in the chat there. So this is going to have all the information in it from you. Or that we're going to present today. You can follow along with us in there. We will refer to it pretty often. I'm getting a message here that someone had music, but now they have no sound. Can you hear me, Heather? Am I? Can anybody else having trouble hearing me? I want to fix that if we can. But I do think that I'm.
And I will say sometimes Webex has a tend to, it switches your audio sometimes. So you might want to check that. If you go up to the bar at the top, there's an audio and video settings, and you can drop that down and kind of check whether that's coming through your speakers on your computer or through a headset of some sort or something like that. And that usually helps.
Yeah, and it seems like everyone else can hear me, so I do think you probably need to make an adjustment there on your screen there. So anyway, I apologize for that. If you can't hear me, you might not have heard that explanation either, but hopefully you can hear Heather. So anyway, those documents, they're in the chat. You can open them up. You can follow along with us in there. Our presentation that we're going to go through in there today is in there. So check those out. There are maybe a couple of places where there's some changes. I'll point out where those are as we get to them, but those binder materials are there for you. Also, in our emails that we sent you, we've stated that attending a half-day webinar in conjunction with our Social Security, Medicare, and estate planning video provides a full-day seminar experience. What does that mean? Well, what you're going to hear from Heather and I today over the next few hours is a complete layout of your retirement plan. It's the exact same program you would have heard from us in the morning if you would have attended one of our all-day in-person seminars. But in the afternoon of those in-person seminars, you would have also heard a short presentation about Social Security, a short presentation about Medicare, presentation on estate planning, and we are not going to have those today in this smaller time period, but we do have videos available on our website to help you do that, or help you get that full day seminar experience if that is what you would like. A link to those videos was in that email that I sent you, and it's on the videos page of our website, or you can search NPERS at YouTube, and we have a YouTube page as well that you can get all those videos on. So there's some good material there. Actually, the stuff you would hear from there, it's the same, even the same presenter you would have heard if you would have gone to like one of our Lincoln events. So check that out, and on your own time, you can check those out. Each one, the Medicare and the estate planning are about an hour long. Social Security is about 25-30 minutes. So, but those are available there on our website. And then moving along here, when you sign out today, you will be asked to fill out a survey about our event. We would appreciate it if you have the time to go ahead and fill out that survey. We use them to really just sort of sharpen the sword with these webinars. It's a newer option. We're still kind of honing and honing these into what we want them to be, and we want them to meet our members' needs. So we'd love to have your comments about what you think we could do better, what you think we did a good job of, and all that stuff. So if you had time, we'd love to have you fill that out. What'll happen is if you sign out of the event, it should pop up there after you sign out. If you're still in here and you're wondering where to get that survey, it hasn't appeared to you yet because you're still in the event. And then finally, I do want to address question and answer time. We do realize that everyone comes to these events with questions about their account. We want you to know that we understand that, and we have a lot of time set today to help you to answer these questions for you. You can ask us, as I'm talking, if a question pops into your head, you can sure just type it in there, and Heather will answer while I'm talking, and while Heather's talking, I will answer questions that come in. We'll also have break times. We'll also have break times where you can ask us questions, and we'll stick around at the end to answer all questions as they're coming in. But I do just want to temper your expectations a little bit. We don't have access to your personal information as we're talking here today. So, there's going to be just as many financial situations as there are people on this call. And so it's entirely possible that you'll ask us a question and we will have to ask you to call our call center because it's maybe just a little bit into the weeds about your own personal account information. If that happens, please know that we are not just avoiding your question or blowing you off. We just want to make sure you get correct information. So if we ask you to call the call center, we're asking you to call a bunch of capable people who really know your plan well and who can sit at their computer and look at your account information while they are talking to you on the phone there. So please don't be upset if we can't answer your question. We just don't want to guess. We want to make sure you get the right information and leave here with the correct information today. I'm going to pause here for a quick drink. All right, and then speaking of questions and answers, you should see two different panels on the right-hand side of my face there. One is called the chat panel, or the right-hand side of our presentation. One's called the chat panel and one's called the Q&A panel. We're going to ask that if you have questions, you go ahead and put them in the Q&A panel and not the chat panel. We like to keep that chat panel clear for us to post links to resources. And so if you put a question in there, there's a good chance it's going to get lost among a bunch of links that we're posting. And the Q&A panel actually allows us as presenters to keep track of which questions we've addressed already and answer them specifically. So what I would like is, if you have a question, please go ahead and put it in that Q&A panel and not the chat panel. So now that we've got that covered, we're going to go ahead and dig in here. We do have quite a few topics we're going to cover today. We're going to go over how the state and county retirement plans work. We're going to go over some definitions and distribution options. And then we're going to spend some time showing you how to use our benefit estimator. And then we're going to go ahead and talk about some salary replacement goals and our DCP plan, which is a optional plan that's available to state employees and some county employees to help meet salary replacement goals. But to begin, let's start by talking about the retirement office and how to contact us. The Nebraska Public Employees Retirement System, or NPERS, is a state agency that administers both the state and county retirement plans. I would recommend keeping this information handy. Why? Well, because we have your money. And as a general rule, it's a good idea to keep the names and addresses and phone numbers handy of people who have their mitts on your money. You can see our physical address there, 1526 K Street. We are in the building that's across the street from the Capitol, downtown Lincoln, that has like the naked people and like the palm of somebody's hand in it. If that helps you know where we are at all. If you do come and visit us, you can rest assured, though, on the inside, we are fully clothed. But that's the building we're in, the fourth floor there. Our call center are our phone numbers there. Those are the two numbers you can call if we ask you to call the call center, the 471 if you are local, or the 800 number if you're further away. And then our fax number is there as well. And then you can also see at the bottom there our npers.ne.gov, our web address. We'll talk about that a lot more today. So moving on. NPERS is not the only entity that works with your retirement plan. There is a plan record keeper, and that plan record keeper is Emeritus. Emeritus is responsible for tracking the account balances of your account, for making changes to your account, or like transfers if you're in one of our plans where you make your own self-directed investment changes. But if you did have questions about your retirement benefit or your account, we would ask you to call NPERS and not Emeritus. And you can find our website at npers.ne.gov. If you haven't been here in a while, you might look at this and say, well, that looks nice and new. It is. We're about 3 weeks old on a new redesign for our website. So while we're always pretty excited about the stuff that we're putting on that website as far as materials to help people be educated about their plans, we're really excited over the last month or so, just as we've gotten to introduce this new redesign here. So if you've never been to our website before, it's npers.ne.gov. I'd highly recommend that you go check it out. If you've been there before, I'm still going to recommend you go check it out and see how nice and shiny and new it is, and learn your way around there. It's, in my opinion, a lot easier to navigate and get around now than it used to be. So a few things you can find on our website are those top three there: PERB info, investment counsel, and legislative info. You can just keep track with what's happening with your plan from the people who oversee it, who pass laws that affect it, so whether that be the board that oversees NPERS, or whether that be what the unicameral is doing that might affect your retirement plans, we keep track of all that stuff and put that information on our website up there. We have our employer, like our plan info, like our handbooks are all on our website. We have our videos on our website as well as our YouTube page. You can visit our videos page and find all of our websites, or all of our videos for what I'm going to talk about today. And like I mentioned, all of the stuff that you would have heard in an in-person seminar in the afternoon. Our publications are on that page as well, a publications page. And on our publications, you can see that we have a newsletter for your plan. If you haven't read that before, it comes out quarterly. There's always some good information on there about what's happening with your plans. Some of you might have recently got a statement and seen that you got a nice big dividend on your plan there. Well, if you were reading our newsletter, you would have known that back in July, and you could have been looking forward to it like Christmas morning. So those are on our publications page. Our forms page has all of our forms that we're going to talk about throughout the day today. So if you need a beneficiary form at the end of the day, or if you need, a distribution form, stuff like that, you can find that on our website as well, on our forms page. And then our seminar schedule page. The reason I point that out, you might say, well, I'm already at a webinar. I don't need to know when your schedule is. One thing that we've changed, here over the last year is we used to have people come up to us at seminars and say, I enjoyed that information. I'm glad I know this now. But I wish I would have known it 20, 30 years ago. And we sympathize with that. And we worked with the legislature to have some laws, some statutes changed so that you didn't have to be over 50 to attend a seminar anymore. You could attend a seminar anytime throughout your career as a state or a county employee. The rule is you can attend up to 3 of these with paid time off throughout your career. The only stipulation is they can't both be um, in the same calendar year. So what our hope is that you find this information helpful, and maybe there's people in your office who maybe aren't thinking about retirement. Maybe they're a little bit far away, but you think, well, when I was their age, I wish I would have known what I learned today. You could tell them to check out our page there on that seminars. This is actually our last webinar for the year, but we'll have some, in the next couple of months, we'll put up some new dates for webinars for the spring for the state and county plan. And then, of course, we'll come out with our new seminar schedule for in-person seminars next summer as well. So that's there. And then on the top right-hand side here, you see a box that says log on, log in. If you click on that, there are 2 different account logins that you can have as a state or a county member. One is going to be the NPERS online account. You can sign up for an account through our website. Basically, if you sign up for that account, what you'll be able to see is who your beneficiaries are, and that's about all. Now, that's not invaluable information of all the things we might ask you to call the call center about. They can't tell you who the beneficiaries are over the phone. That's a violation of privacy law. So it is important to know where you can find your beneficiaries. But other than that, there's just not a lot of functionality for your state and county plan members, especially while you're still working. Once you do retire, you can fill out some tax paperwork and stuff on there as well. But the other account, the other online account that you can sign up for that I really do want to encourage you to do if you haven't already is an Emeritus online account. If you sign up for that Emeritus online account, you can sign in at any time, see what your account balances are. You can see who your beneficiaries are on that login as well. You can also look at old quarterly statements, which should also have beneficiaries on them. If you're in one of our plans, our DC or our DCP plan, where you make your own self-directed investment changes, you can make those changes on the Emeritus online account as well. So again, I don't get a bonus or anything if you sign up for that Emeritus online account, but it is very, very helpful for state county members just to keep on top of your retirement accounts and how your money's doing. So you can get to that there on the login page. You can click, there's even some instructions there on how to do it if you can't figure it out on your own. So there's some resources there. And then our benefit estimator is also still there on our website. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I'm going to pause here for another drink. Pretty dry here, so I apologize for all the drinking. We do offer office visits for our retiring members. These are by appointment only. You can do these virtually or in person. A couple of things that I want you to know about these is one, these are not required to start the ball rolling for retirement. Most retirement balls start rolling with just a phone call. You don't have to have one of these visits, but they are available to you if you would like to have one. The other thing I want you to know about them is that it's not going to be a visit where we're going to give you advice about what you should do with your money, what the best annuities would be for you, what the best methods of distribution would be for you. We're not going to do that sort of thing. Here at NPERS, we are fiduciaries, which means it's up to, it's our best interest. It's our interest to make sure that your money performs well and is safe. We are not financial planners, so we're not going to give you advice about what to do with your money. So that's not what this meeting will be. What this meeting is going to be is someone with NPERS will sit with you or virtually or in person, and they will make sure that you fill out your paperwork correctly. That's something that's a very valuable service for a lot of people. We do get a lot of paperwork that's sent in incorrectly, and then, it has to be sent back and corrected, and that can delay benefit times and stuff like that. So if that does interest you, you are welcome to schedule one of these appointments. They're going to ask, that you make these no more than 6 months out from when you want to retire and no less than 1 month out from your retirement date. So, and then again, if you and your spouse are both members, you're welcome to have one of these meetings together. All right, so it used to be that people thought of retirement as like a three-legged stool. You might have heard that metaphor before about the three legs people bring on their retirement stool, those being Social Security, those being a pension plan, and that being personal savings. Over the years, something that we're seeing in the retirement industry, though, is that a lot of people are they're going into retirement with two of these legs on the stool not being as sturdy as they used to be. So, what do I mean by this? A lot of times we're finding that there are people going into retirement without much of a pension plan from their company, not much of a retirement plan, not much of those specific retirement savings for any number of reasons. Maybe you worked at several different jobs your entire career. You didn't exactly stay at the same place, and so you never consolidated to get that money working for you and building with the compound interest and all that sort of stuff. I know my biggest financial blunder when it comes to retirement is when I did work for that unnamed insurance company with Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers and all their commercials. I they had a really, really good solid retirement plan, but it was optional, and so I didn't participate. When I started working there, I had 3 kids. By the time I left, I had 5. I thought I needed that $50, $75 a month more in my pocket for diapers or whatnot than I did in my retirement plan, and that wasn't the case. The truth is if I would have just pushed that through, I probably would have never even noticed it was gone. Um, so now I didn't start saving for retirement until I'm almost 40 years old and start working for the state of Nebraska. So, if I were to have to retire tomorrow, that pension plan leg on my stool is pretty weak. And then saving, just in general, we're not very good at saving anymore. It can be for, reasons that are beyond our control. Maybe, if you didn't get a 10% raise this year, your dollar is worth less right now than it was a year ago at this time. And so a lot of that's affecting my savings account is how everything's a little bit more expensive and I'm not necessarily making more money either. So money is going towards groceries or, bills or whatever that would normally go to savings because of the wages not keeping up with inflation. Then there's, of course, there's maybe the reasons that aren't so great about not being good at saving. Maybe people who are putting a bunch of money into having the best travel trailer in the neighborhood, or they want to have the best looking deck, and maybe spending money that ought to be earmarked towards retirement savings on just keeping up with the Joneses. That's a reason that maybe we're not very good at saving. For me, one big issue for me is 15 years ago, I moved into a house that was only 6 blocks away from a Popeyes, and I have a really hard time driving by that place on my way home, especially if I know my wife isn't going to be there when I get home without getting some spicy chicken. So, you know what, for whatever reason, we don't save like we used to. I say that as kind of a joke, but the truth is that, there's a lot of times where you have a hard day. Last week we had 3 seminars in person. So that's 10, 11-hour days for me. So, on Wednesday night when it's my night to make dinner, it was a lot easier to spend the $50 that was supposed to go from that paycheck on pizza That money was supposed to go to savings, but it was a lot easier to spend it on pizza for the family than make something when I get home. And so, for whatever reason, we just don't save like we used to. And we see people putting a lot of faith in maybe like Social Security and a little bit of luck to fund their retirement. And that's a problem because Social Security as a program is only meant to replace about 35 to 40% of your income. But the fact is that roughly 40% of retirees are headed into retirement with Social Security as their only income. So what we end up seeing when this happens is that people have to add a fourth leg to their retirement stool. And that fourth leg is earnings from a job to fund their retirement. And you know what? If that's something you want to do, we think that's great. We do have I meet a lot of people who are ready to maybe retire with the state and the county, but maybe they have a little small business that's gotten a lot bigger than that they wanted it to be, that they're excited to put their energies into. I meet a lot of, especially dads around the state who are maybe excited to go work, put in some work for maybe a small business that their son owns or their daughter owns. I see a lot of proud dads that want to do that, and that's wonderful. But what we think is sad and what we don't want to see, we don't like to see, is when all you want to do is go fishing or play with the grandkids or travel with your spouse, but you can't because you have to still be putting in some time wherever it is that you find that job. So one thing that we want to keep in mind today as we're talking is, a good question to be asking yourself is, how much am I going to need to maintain the standard of living that I want to maintain in retirement? The truth is that for a lot of us, our mandatory contributions aren't going to be enough. Most of us will need to save more. There is a handout that I want to draw your attention to. The link there is in the chat. It's called the Nest Egg handout. This is a handout that Heather will talk about a little bit later. But we've done some work with a financial planner just to do some math about what it might take to attain the kind of lifestyle you want to have in retirement, what kind of savings you might not need to have. And so I'd encourage you to check that out, break time or maybe after we're done here, about just some decent information. And you know what? I'm going to be honest. For a lot of people, they see that handout and they, like put it down or throw it away because sometimes it's not great information. It's definitely not great information for me as a guy who didn't start saving for retirement till he was almost 40 years old. But the truth is that that's something we need to think about so that we can start making plans to hopefully eliminate that deficit between what we have and what we need. So um, keep that in mind as we keep going today. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, especially when we talk about our optional, our voluntary DCP plan, which is a plan that NPERS has set up to help state employees and some county employees do some additional retirement savings on their own volition. So we'll talk about that again at the end of the day here. But it is important to know that what we're talking about when we talk about your retirement funds are funds that belong to you. They are not funds that anybody else can get to. If there is like you go through bankruptcy or something like that, they can't get at your retirement funds. The funds that you contribute are invested and available to you only when you quit or retire. The only way that someone might possibly get their money, get their hands on your retirement funds would be if you get into some trouble with the IRS or like with a divorce situation. It's possible. So we like to say you keep your spouse and the tax man happy. You don't have to worry about that money being there for you when you retire. I like to suggest marrying the tax man, and that way you only have to keep one person happy, but I do realize that ship has probably sailed for a lot of us here. Um, And before I go on here, I'm going to pause and take a drink, but I don't know if people can hear this over the phone, but we do have some some construction happening on the other side of the wall here. So if you do hear some banging, I do apologize, but that might just be something we have to live with here throughout the day. Um, they se they seem to do it just specifically on the days we have webinars, and then you don't hear from them for the rest of the week. It's very weird, but they do a great job, so we're excited to see what they're doing over there. But again, I apologize if there's any banging or anything you can hear through my microphone or Heather's microphone there. All right, so here's a quick outline of where we're headed here for the rest of the morning. I'm going to talk about the two different benefits you might be a part of as a state or a county employee. We're going to talk about your contributions, how you're vested, and then the investments and rates of return you can expect from the benefit that you're in. Then we're going to take a break, and when we come back, Heather will talk about your options at termination or retirement. She'll talk about the annuities available to you, disability info, death before retirement, and she'll spend some time talking about that DCP plan I just mentioned, which is that voluntary plan we have set up to help do some additional retirement saving. But an important place to start is to talk about which benefit you might be a participant in. There are two different benefits that you might be a part of as a state or a county employee. Those are either the defined contribution benefit or the cash balance benefit. Those are the two different mandatory participation benefits available for state and county employees. And then there's also that DCP plan, which I just mentioned is our voluntary plan. So which benefit are you a part of? Are you a DC person or are you a cash balance person? There are a few ways that you can tell. The easiest way is that if you began in the plan on or after January 1st, 2003, you are a cash balance member. That's the easy way. You started on or after that date, you were enrolled as a cash balance member. If you started on or after January 1st, 2018, you are what's known as a cash balance tier 2 member, which there's a couple of little differences between that and the regular tier 1. We'll talk about those differences when they arise, but you need to know that. So you started on or after January 1st, 2003, you are a cash balance member. Now, if you started with the state or the county prior to January 1st, 2003, it does get a little bit tricky and you might have to do some remembering. If you started before that date, you were enrolled as a defined contribution member, but you were given 3 chances, one in 2003, one in 2007, and one in 2012 to change your account over to the cash balance benefit. So if you joined the plan before January 1st, 2003, and did not elect to convert to the cash balance benefit in either 03, 07, or 12, you would be a defined contribution member. Another way you can tell is if you look at your statement, there's going to be a pie chart on there that'll show you how your funds are invested. If that pie looks like a pie that's fresh out of the oven with no pieces cut out of it, you're going to be a cash balance member. If there are pieces cut out of that pie indicating your money is spread around into different funds, you would be a DC member. And then the last thing is the one piece of personal information I do actually know about everyone in here today is which plan they're in. So if you, which benefit they're in, I'm sorry. So if you are still unsure after those two things, you can send me a question and I can privately send back to you which benefit you're a part of. So again, that's the cash balance or the DC. And I am going to spend the rest of most of my time talking about how those two plans are different, those two benefits are different, but I do want to start by talking about the ways in which they are the same. Those are in the contribution rates, the vesting, and then we'll talk about retirement age a little bit later. So one way in which the two benefits, the defined contribution and the cash balance, are the same, are going to be in the contribution rates. You contribute the same amount of your salary, whether you are a cash balance or a DC member, and that your employer contributes the same amount as well, whether you're a cash balance or a DC member. But at this point, you might have noticed that I haven't really talked about the state versus the county plan at all today. We have state members in here today. We also have county members in here today. And so the reason we don't talk about the state versus the county plan, we talk about the state county plan, is because they are the same with this one difference, and that's going to be in the contributions. So again, no difference between the DC and the cash balance benefit, but there is just this difference here between the state and the county contributions. So if you're a state member here today, you contribute 4.8% of your salary when you are paid to your retirement, and then the state matches that at 156%. And then if you are a county member, you contribute 4.5% of your salary, and the county matches that at 150%. But again, those are the same whether you're in DC or cash balance, and that's the only difference there between the county and the state contributions. The other way in which the DC and the cash balance benefits are the same are going to be in the vesting schedule. Vesting is the point at which, if you were to terminate employment, you would be able to leave with not only your contributions, but also the contributions of your employer. And if you're under the age of 55, that vesting time is 3 years of contributions to the plan and service time. So what does that mean? That's two different things: contributions to the plan and service time. So just as an example, I'll use myself as an example here. About a month ago, I hit my 3-year anniversary working with the state. So I had 3 years of service time. But if I would have quit and had that be my last day, I would not have been vested in the plan, because what I didn't have was 3 years of contributing to the plan. That comes a little bit later. You know, when you started working for the state or the county, I'm guessing you didn't get paid on your first day, and when you start getting paid is when you are that's when you start contributing to the plan. So there was this little 2-week sort of period of limbo where I had the 3 years of service time, but not 3 years of paying into the plan. You want to make sure that you have both of those if you are under the age of 55, and once you do, you are vested. And if you're over the age of 55 and you're a contributing member to the plan, I have great news. You are vested. As long as you're a contributing member over the age of 55, even if maybe you just got hired a month ago or whatever, if you're over the age of 55 and you're a contributing member, then you are vested. But again, you need to note there that you have to be a contributing member after the age of 55. I couldn't quit now at age 41 and just come back at age 55, like if I only had 2 years of contributions, and say, hey, I'm ready for all of it to be vested now because I'm over 55. It's for contributing members over the age of 55. Those are the two easy ways to become vested. Those are the ways we recommend. The other ways you can become vested in the plan are if you die as a contributing member to the plan, you would be vested regardless of service time. And then if you qualify for a disability while you're a contributing member to the plan, you would also be vested. It is important to note that for that disability, our requirements for what it takes to be qualified for that are going to be different than what you might be familiar with, say, Social Security. So if you think that might apply to you at some point in the future, I'd encourage you to give us a call at the call center there and just find out what it is. You know, what boxes you need to check off to qualify for that disability. So here we're going to come to the part where we're going to talk about the biggest difference between the cash balance and the defined contribution benefits, and that's going to be in the investments and the rate of return. If you are a cash balance member, so again, that's the cash balance, not defined contribution. If you're a cash balance member, the big thing you need to know here is that you don't have investment choices for your money. The Nebraska Investment Council does all of the investing for the cash balance benefit. But on the flip side of that, you don't get to choose where your money goes. On the flip side, though, they do give you a guaranteed rate of return. And that guaranteed rate of return is the federal midterm rate plus 1.5% with a guaranteed minimum of 5%. So the most recent federal midterm rate came out in September at 2.92%. So we received that 1.5% bump, which would have been a 4.42% rate of return for the last quarter, but we have that guaranteed 5%. So everybody in the cash balance benefit, whether you're a state or a county member, received that full 5% rate of return on your money last quarter. Now, it is important to note that that is just a minimum. So if the federal midterm rate were to come back at, say, 4% for a period, you would still get that 1.5% bump, and we would all get a 5.5% rate of return overall for that period. So again, that's just kind of a little benefit there on the flip side of not being able to choose where your money is invested. And then we also receive an enhanced annuity factor rate as cash balance members. For Tier 1, that annuity factor rate is 7.75%. And for Tier 2, that's currently 7.3%, but that will be decreasing by 0.1% per year until it settles at 7%. And just for the sake of reference, the annuity factor rate for a DC member is currently 3.12. So you can see there that 7.75%, that's more than double what the going rate is there. So that's quite an enhancement. And that 3.12 number goes up and down with the markets and stuff like that. And so you have that static 7.75% if you are a cash balance Tier 1 member. And then as cash balance members, you are also eligible to receive dividends. Some of you, I already mentioned this earlier, you noticed you got a nice dividend in your most recent statement. It should have showed up. If you're a state member, you received a 7.5% dividend this summer, and county members received a 6.5% dividend. So what does that mean? Well, basically, in the early summer, the Public Employees Retirement Board, the PERB, meets and they look at the funded status of the plan and make a determination if the plan is funded enough to give a dividend back to its members. So this year they decided 7.5% there if you are a state member and 6.5% if you're a county member. And how that ends up working is you receive that dividend on whatever your account balance was as of January 31st the previous year. So if you're a state member, 7.5% was added to your account, base 7.5% of what your account balance was on December 31st, 2021, and 6.5% if you're in the county. So that's the cash balance benefit. How is that different from our DC benefit? Well, the big difference is that in the DC benefit, you control your own investment decisions. There are 17 different funds that are available for you to direct where your contributions go. I want to note at this time that also if you're a member of our voluntary DCP plan, you are able to direct your voluntary funds to these same 17 different funds. Because of this, because you make those choices, you don't receive a guaranteed rate of return. You very well might see that account balance go up or down from statement to statement depending on how the funds you have your money invested in are performing. Again, we mentioned earlier that at NPERS we are not financial planners. We don't give investment advice, but as fiduciaries, what we do is we try to give good education about investing so that you can be a savvy investor yourself. We do this in a couple of different ways. One, we have an annual investment report that you can find on our website where we have all of the funds in there that you can invest your money in, and they give you just sort of synopsis of how they've performed within the last year, what it is that they do. It kind of just gives you some information about what kind of a risk it is. We have people all across the spectrum. Maybe you're a person like me who is trying to play a little bit of catch up, and so you are willing to take on a little bit more risk with your retirement funds to catch up and hopefully gain a little bit more money. Well, we've got funds for that. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle. Maybe you want some growth, but you also want your money to be there. We've got funds for that. And maybe you're a conservative, maybe investor. Maybe you're getting real close to retirement and you are just interested in, you know, conserving that balance. Well, we have funds for that as well. And if you look on that annual investment report, you can see how those funds have been performing over the last year. We also have two different investment education videos on our website. One is just sort of an intro to investing and investing 101, if you will, where a licensed estate planner from Omaha worked with us to create this video, and he just gives you sort of a rundown of just basic investment terms and stuff like that. So if you're very new to investing, that's going to be a good video, a nice resource for you. And then we also have a more in-depth video where that same financial planner breaks down all of the plans that you have available to you to put the money in if you are a DC member or a DCP member. So when you direct your own investments as a DC member, you have two different ways that you can make some fund allocations with your money. The first is what we call an investment election, and that allocates your future contributions. So you can go into your account and say that every 2 weeks or month or however often you get paid, every time I get paid, I want my contributions and the contributions of my employer to go into this fund or these 4 funds or these 17 funds, however it is that you want to do it, you make that choice so that all of your future money gets moved into the fund that you want it to upon your contribution. And then you're also able to make transfers as a DC or a DCP member, which means you can move all of your existing money. So you know what? The market is kind of volatile right now. It's going down quite a bit. Maybe you look at your investments and think, I need to go into something a little bit more conservative and just conserve these funds right now. You can make that choice to move all of your existing funds to other funds to fit your investment needs and what it is that you want to accomplish with your money. There are the ways that we can do those transfers, those investment elections, is you can do it either through our investment election form, which you can find on that form page I brought up earlier on npers.ne.gov, or you can also do it on the Emeritus Online website if you have that online account like I talked to you about earlier. So you're welcome to do it in either of these two ways, but if you are a DC or a DCP member, I do want to make sure that you know that when you fill out that investment election form, you're going to put that in the mail and send it to us. It's then subject to however long it takes to get here, and then a few days handling time once it does get here. And I don't know if you've noticed recently, it seems to me the mail's going a little bit slower. So it could be, a week to 2 weeks before those changes that you want to have made are actually made if you send in that form. If you have the Emeritus online account, you are going to be able to sign in, make those changes on that online account, and those will happen at the end of the business day. So again, I'm not trying to twist anybody's arm, but if you're a DC or a DCP member, that Emeritus online account is going to be really valuable for you, especially when it comes to moving your money around.
My name is Heather Critchfield Smith, and I am the Education Services Manager. Last year, I was a Public Information Officer. Before that, like now, I'm the Marketing and Communications Specialist 3 for the office. We provide all of your educational materials. We do a lot of work with publications that come out of the office and things like that. But mostly what it means is that I get to talk to you about your retirement. And I love talking to you about your retirement. I could do that all day long, honestly. With this plan, I've been with NPERS for, we're going to say conservatively about 11 years. It's 11 plus now. But I didn't start out doing this. Okay. I started out in the mailroom and I worked in the mailroom for a while. And then I went to our data services team, which is the team that actually puts in your beneficiary information, updates your taxes, your direct deposits, stuff like that. And then I went to processing. So I've actually processed manual annuity calculations and payments, distribution payments. I've processed death payments. I've worked on all kinds of things, rollovers and all other distributions. And then I moved to training so that I get to do this. And for a while I did Jeremy's job, and then I moved to my boss's job when he left. So I'm very excited to be here today, and I'm really happy that you took the time to think about your retirement, because a lot of the time we don't get to talk to people prior to when they start thinking about their retirement. And this is something, this plan, if you know about it, it's going to work for you. Okay. The earlier that you know about it, you can make plans with it. But I see a lot of retirements. I have in the long time that I've been here. Gives me kind of a unique perspective, which I hope to be able to pass on to you. One of the things that I want you to focus on, I see successful retirements. And although I don't give you financial advice, I can't do that. I can see what has been successful in the past and try and pass those things on to you. And I think that's very important. So, with that said, this plan is a 401A. If I were writing things down at home, I would write 401A, because that is the IRS coding for the type of money that is in this account. And that coding basically determines all the rules that apply to this type of money. Okay, we follow a lot of rules, federal rules, state statutes, rules. So knowing those rules is going to make it easier for you to do what you want with this retirement account when you want to do it. Okay, so with that said, how the 401A works, and this is a very simplified example. Basically, you have money come in from your contributions. That money that comes from your check is pre-tax money, okay? It has not been taxed. So it goes into your retirement account. Hopefully, there is growth, and then when payments come to you in retirement, they're taxed at that point in time. And that's a really important thing to remember about this type of account, because if you remember that, then you know that any type of payment that comes out of this account to you is going to be taxed in some way, shape, or form. Okay? And if I have little tax things, I'll let you know about those too. But first of all, when we understand this, understanding taxes is pretty integral to a successful retirement. So that's why I give you the simplified example, so that you can kind of keep that in mind for later. Okay. Having a tax strategy means understanding the taxation of various payments that's going to come to you, what your kind of threshold is for that, and how things go, because then you can have different financial vehicles working for you at the same time, balancing out those taxes and hopefully helping you to keep more of your money in your own pocket. That's a big deal in retirement. That's how you succeed in retirement. More of your own money in your pocket. Okay. So if we go in with an investment strategy, or at least a basic understanding of investments, and a tax strategy, those two things are really going to help us be successful retirees. I've seen that work for people, but it does take a little bit of research. It takes a little bit of time. Okay. So now that we have that basic understanding, let's talk about something that we can't avoid. That's the required minimum distribution. And what that essentially is, well, it's the IRS taking a good look at your plan and going, hey, that's a really beautiful pre-tax retirement plan that you have right there. Sure would be a shame if somebody were to tax that. So they tell you that by a certain age, you're required to take a distribution from this account. Okay. Now, if you're in DC, this is going to be less of a big deal. But if you're in cash balance, this is going to trigger something on your account, which is a one-time distribution event. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. But the trigger on that one is your age. Okay. First of all, you have to have ceased employment, which means you have to have stopped working in order to access any funds from your account. And that's all the way across the board. When the IRS looks at retirement accounts, they say you have to stop working in order to access funds from it. Okay, so if you're still working past this required minimum distribution age, which by the way is 72, you're okay. But when you cease employment, it's going to kick you onto some pretty fast track timelines. Okay, and we know that this is very complicated as far as RMD goes, and it can affect you differently depending on which benefit you're actually a part of, whether you're a defined contribution or a cash balance member. So we don't want you to trip up on this one, so we have put out a handout. Okay, now that handout has been linked in the chat box. If you're getting close to 72, you know somebody who's working with you who's close to 72, read that handout. I cannot stress this enough. It gives you timelines for when you need to take distributions to make sure that you're taking your RMDs on time. Okay, the reason is because there's a penalty, of course, if you fail to do this. And that penalty, let me explain this kind of in a numbers way so you get this. I've seen RMDs be approximately 3 to 5% of the entire account balance. So think about your account balance. Now think of what 3 to 5% of that would be. Now, if you miss your timelines, you're penalized up to 50% of that RMD amount. So you would automatically lose 1.5 to 2.5% of your account just because you couldn't time it exactly right. We don't want that to happen to anybody, so we start sending you letters, once you hit about 65. And we've got our handouts and all kinds of resources on this one, so don't miss out. Have a read over that, okay? Retirement versus termination. This is quite a big one because when I spoke earlier, I said that the IRS has a big deal rule. That big deal rule is that you cease employment in order to access funds from your retirement account. So when we talk about retirement and termination, we are essentially talking about one thing. It's that important thing, ceasing employment. And when you do that, your age when you do that is going to determine whether you've retired or whether you've terminated. Okay, so if you cease employment, on or after age 55, that's considered a retirement. And the reason that's important is because that might affect your continuation of health insurance through the state if you're a state employee. Okay. Next, we've got termination. So if you've ceased employment, prior to age 55, before you turn 55, and then you try to, this is important because then you actually might be subject to something we call the early withdrawal tax penalty. And the early withdrawal tax penalty is no joke, honestly. It's a big one. If you're subject to this, meaning, okay, so you cease employment prior to age 55, and then you attempt to take funds from a retirement account, you're going to be subject to this. So let's say you try and draw out a lump sum of cash from this account or the entire account balance. We're going to have to withhold 20 and 5. That's 20% federal and 5% state for taxes. Okay, 25. But if you're subject to this early withdrawal tax penalty, then you're also subject to an extra 10% federal and 3% state. So now you're losing 38% of whatever you attempt to draw out to taxes. The 20 and 5 would happen when we actually make the distribution, and that 10 and 3 is going to happen when you file your taxes at the end of the year. Okay, so it's a big deal. It's a hefty tax. So you really have to think, if you cease employment prior to age 55, whether you want to take funds out of the retirement account, because nothing says that you have to. Okay, you can leave it if you want. But being subject to this early withdrawal tax penalty, that's a big deal. And if you're subject to that, so let's say you try and take funds out and then you take that 38% tax hit, you're going to be subject to that all the way up to the federal retirement age, which is 59 and a half. Okay. So important to note, And if you have, this might not necessarily be you, maybe it's somebody else in your office that you need to talk to about this, but it is a pretty big tax penalty if you're subject to it. So something important to pay attention to. And where we're going to move on next. So we've talked about terminating employment, right? When you cease employment. Once you cease employment, you have access to your funds, okay? Whether you retire or you terminate. Now, like I said, you got that big tax penalty on it, but you have access to it if you've terminated. So we look at this, depending on which benefit you're in, your distribution options can be very different. So hopefully you know which one you're in. Am I DC? Am I cash balance? If you're defined contribution, we're going to talk about your distribution options right now. If you're a DC member, then you can defer, which means that you can leave your funds here. Nobody says you have to take them. You can do a lump sum distribution, which is cash coming directly to you in a big payment. You can do a rollover, which means that you take funds out of this and roll it into a different retirement type of account. Okay. You could do a systematic withdrawal, which means that you ask for a certain payment to come to you with a certain frequency, but essentially it's taxed just like small lump sums. Okay. Or you can take a monthly annuity, or you can do a combination of all of these. The big deal, or the most important thing to know if you're DC, is that one bullet point on this slide that I haven't read verbatim. That is, you have no limits on the number of distribution options that you can take. So what does that really mean to you? What that really means to you is that you have the ability to take partials. Okay, so if you wanted to, let's say that you've retired and you want to take 50% of your account out as a lump sum, you can do that and then leave the rest. So if you get up to RMD age, let's say you get up to 72, then if you wanted to, you can take your RMD as a lump sum distribution and leave the rest. Okay. The important thing to stress on there is that you have that option to have, partial withdrawals, or you do partial options. Okay. That's the big deal for DC. Because when we talk to our cash balance members now, you do not have the option to do partials. You have what's called a one-time distribution event. And what that means is you can do all the options that are available to you, like a monthly annuity or a lump sum or a rollover or a combination of all of these, but you have to do them at one point in time. Okay? Because with cash balance, if you take $1 out, you have to take all dollars out. Okay? So remember, your cash balance, $1 out, all dollars out. Okay, so I give an example of this one so people can kind of wrap their mind around it a little bit better. Are you ready? Let's say that I am cash balance tier 1, which I am, and I decide that at my retirement, I am going to take a $10,000 lump sum out of my account. And I start with $60,000. Let's say I've got a $60,000 balance. That's my whole account balance. I'm going to take a $10,000 lump sum, which means that I'm going to basically take that as a cash distribution to me. They're going to withhold 20 and 5 from that amount. But it's important to me to have that because I want to have a liquid cash, access to a liquid cash account in case I suffer a financial shock during my retirement. What's a financial shock, you might say? Well, that's when, your neighbor's tree finally falls in on your roof and you need a new roof. It's okay to set up, income streams like Social Security that pays you a check every single month, and maybe an annuity from us that pays you every single month. But there are going to be instances during which you're going to need access to a liquid cash account in retirement. That's just how life works. So I'm going to take that tax hit on that $10,000 so that I have access to a liquid cash account. Okay. Then I am going to do a $25,000 rollover. So I'm going to take $25,000 from my account. I'm going to roll it over into, my account and financial vehicles with Charles Schwab or Raymond James or Edward Jones, wherever my financial planner is. Okay. If I do that correctly, and we're going to talk about rollovers a little bit more in depth in a minute, that's not going to create a taxable event. Then I'm going to take the remaining $25,000 out of my account and I'm going to purchase an annuity. And please take note that when I said annuity, I said purchase, because sometimes it's very difficult for people to understand that with annuities, what you're doing is taking money from your wallet, your account, and you're taking money out of that, you are purchasing something else. And what I'm purchasing is an income stream for a certain amount of time. Okay? That's essentially what an annuity is. So $10,000 in my lump sum, $25,000 in my rollover. And lastly, that's $25,000 to my annuity. 10, 25, 25. That's my whole balance of $60,000. Now I've done all the distribution options, but I have to do them at one point in time. Okay. So that's how that one-time distribution event works. And the reason that I kind of give that example is because when we talked about the RMD earlier, having a one-time distribution event can be very affected by getting up to the age where it's going to require you to take a distribution, right? Like if the IRS tells you you have to take a distribution from your account, essentially what they're saying is now you better know what you need to do with the rest of that account too, because you're going to have to take a distribution to satisfy the taxes the IRS wants. And at that point, you have to take all dollars out because you've taken $1 out. So you can leave your money there if you want to, defer it up until RMD age if your cash balance, and then that will trigger the fact that you have to take the entire account. Okay. All right. So we've got cash balance options for distribution. We talked about DC options for distribution. We're going to go through each one of these in depth a little bit more. Okay. So when we talk about deferral, there's a lot of good reasons just to leave your money. We don't tell you you have to take it after you've terminated employment. You could certainly just let that account sit there. And there's a lot of good reasons to do that. If you're DC, if you're our defined contribution members, then all the funds in there are still going to be actively invested in where you decide to put them. So who knows? Maybe because of how the market is right now, you need to extend your time horizon, which means that you need to extend that period of time before you need to access your funds, maybe to see if the market will come back. And who knows? I'm in DCP, so I'm pretty optimistic that it will at some point in time. I also know that the 100-year average of the S&P has been 10%. So because I have a lengthy time horizon, I'm not worried about whether the market will return or not. I just need to try and get to the point where it does. Okay. And that's just me. I get to give my opinions about this, but that's all I really get to give you. Okay. So if you want to leave it, you certainly can after you terminate. It's still invested. It's still going to be invested where you want it to be. And that's kind of a big deal because you can change your investment allocations and make transfers. And I'm also going to tell you that one of the great things about how the state does this, or how NPERS does this with Emeritus, is because of our size, we're institutional investors. So we have the opportunity to give you or pass on to our membership lower fees. And if you want to know what our fees are, and this is very important no matter what financial product or vehicle you're in, the fee structure should be laid out not only someplace you can find it, but someplace you can easily find it. So I'm going to tell you, everybody got their statements at least a week ago, maybe a little bit more. I mean, I certainly got both of my statements. I pull those out every time and I read them. All of our fees are disclosed on those statements. So if you're not quite sure exactly what the fees have been, you can have a look there. If you want to know what the fees are in basis points per fund, then open up that investment report. We're very transparent with what our fees are, and they're pretty darn low. Okay, so good reason to just leave it. If your cash balance, then you're going to be receiving that midterm rate plus 1.5% and that guaranteed 5% minimum. I don't know a lot of accounts that are getting guaranteed 5% minimums right now. So I find that fairly comforting. And that rate's not going to stop once you terminate or retire. That's still there. That 5% return is still there. You also have the potential to still get dividends on your account. Even if you're not employed, if your money is still here, if you still have funds in that account, then you're still eligible to receive dividends if they're awarded. Okay, so that's another good reason to just leave it. Plus, you're not creating any taxable event. It's just sitting there growing for you. Okay, so good reasons for deferral. Lump sum distributions. I already gave you a great example of why a lump sum distribution might work for you. Sometimes you need access to cash or liquid cash, and that's very important. So we tax these at 20 and 5, but there's really not a huge amount to say about it. It's just cash coming from this account to you. Now, is that 20 and 5 going to be what you pay in taxes this year? Well, who knows? I don't know what bracket you're actually in. So let's remember that's actually just a deposit on what you're going to be paying in taxes. You might get a refund. You might get that all back when you file your taxes at the end of the year. Who knows? Rollovers. I talked very briefly about rollovers, and in this one, I kind of discuss a little bit IRAs, individual retirement accounts. I don't go into it too very much because we don't service any IRAs here in the office, okay? So this is just general information for you about some things that are good. I think IRAs are great. If you have them in conjunction with your mandatory or any of the other plans that you're doing, that's fantastic. I am all for that. Important thing to note here, though, when you're doing rollovers, which means you're basically moving funds from this account here with us to another account that is being administered someplace else, like privately, understand what type of funds that new account accepts. Okay, I told you how the 401k has a bunch of rules. It's the IRS rules for that money. Well, other retirement accounts have rules as well about funds that they can accept and kind of how that's okay and not okay. If I were to talk about an IRA that functions almost exactly like our plan, basically, you remember the simplified example where we said, okay, money comes in and those contributions are pre-tax, meaning they haven't been taxed at that point in time. And then there's some growth. And then the payments that come to you in retirement are taxed at that point in time, right? That's how ours works. That's almost exactly how a traditional IRA works as well. Okay. Money goes into that pre-tax, there's some growth, and then when payments come out of a traditional IRA, they're taxed at that point in retirement. Why might that be a good thing for you? And this is I know this is common sense for some people. They're just going to shake their head on the other side of the screen. But I needed to be reminded of this at one point in time, so I'm reminding everybody else. When you're employed and you're making all this money from your job, you're paying a lot of income tax, you know. Well, in retirement, are you going to be making as much as now when you're employed? Well, the answer for most of us is no. And if we're not making as much, then perhaps in retirement, when we're in a lower tax bracket, is going to be a good time for us to get payments that might be taxed because maybe they're taxed less. And maybe that means that we're keeping more of that money in our own pocket. Maybe. Who knows? Just saying. But it's important to know. The next IRA that we're going to talk about is a Roth IRA. And I think it's really important to talk about this one because it functions exactly the opposite from our plan and from a traditional IRA, meaning that money that comes into a Roth is post tax money. That money has already been taxed. You put it in there, there's some growth, but that also means that payments that come to you from a Roth IRA in retirement are what? They're tax-free. Hey, that's fantastic, right? It's a good tool to work into a tax strategy to kind of help balance your taxation in retirement and on those payments. I also know some people who have used that in their financial planning as their liquid cash account. You remember in my example that I said I took that lump sum to have a liquid cash account. Well, if I have a Roth IRA, the payments that are coming to me from that account are tax-free. So maybe I use that as my liquid cash emergency account. Who knows? I think it's great if you have a traditional or if you have a Roth. But I have seen this happen where people did not understand how their Roth functioned, and they moved a ton of money from us into a Roth IRA. Okay. The problem with that, it's not even a problem if you understand it and you're prepared for it. But the issue is when you don't, you're creating a taxable event right then. It's not even called a transfer anymore. It's called a conversion because you're converting this type of pre-tax account into a post-tax account. So how do you do that? You get taxed. Okay. So it's not a big deal if you know what's going to happen. I know plenty of people who said, oh no, I'm totally prepared. I'm going to take that tax hit and do that because I want the Roth. Okay. But I've also had people who did not understand it, and that taxable event did a worst case scenario thing where it bumped them up into another tax bracket, and then suddenly they're getting taxed even more. So just something to be aware of when you're doing some financial planning. Most of the time, if you're working with, IRAs or a Roth or something like that, you're probably working with a financial planner at that new company that you're moving money to, which is absolutely okay. Most financial planners are worth every single dime that you pay them, but you do have to make sure that your financial planner is also, has the same mindset that you have, has the same goals. I like to make sure that my financial planner is also a fiduciary because it means that they're invested in me succeeding. And I kind of want that. So very cool. Most of the time they'll help you with rollovers and paperwork and stuff like that if you want to do that. It's really important these days that we do understand the fee structure of these new vehicles and products that they might be putting us in. I don't ever want to deny somebody a living. Like financial planners, they're good at what they do and they get paid to do that. But do make sure that you understand that sometimes they get commissions on the money that you move over with them. Okay. So important things to note there. This next one we're going to talk about is a systematic withdrawal. And you'll notice the systematic withdrawal was not an option for our cash balance benefit members. This is only for our defined contribution members. But this one's pretty simple to explain. Okay. Essentially, it's you telling us the amount that you want. Okay. It's got to be more than $100. But you tell us the amount that you want. And then you're going to tell us the frequency that you'd like that. So do you want it monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually? You can pick. As long as that amount's over $100, you give us the frequency, we're going to pay you from your account. And if you want to continue that systematic withdrawal, you can do that all the way until the account balance is zero, if you want. Okay. This is taxed just like a lump sum payment, though, because essentially what it is just a lump sum payment that you've set up on a certain frequency. So it's taxed at 20 and 5. But the thing about this one is that you can also compensate for that. Like 20 and 5 is going to come out of each payment. So if you need that amount, then you ask for 25% more. Okay? And the reason that I talk about it like that is because the next thing we're going to talk about, the monthly annuity, that's us telling you how much we're going to pay. And the frequency on that one is monthly. Okay. No other frequency, just monthly. I did talk briefly about this earlier. in kind of trying to explain how annuities work. But I'm going to also tell you, Americans don't really like annuities, mainly because it's very difficult for us to give up access to large sums of money in exchange for payment streams. Okay, so with an annuity, it does help to prevent one of the other things that we're seeing that is a trend in retirement. And this is not a good trend, just so you know. It's the fact that we are seeing people who are outliving their funds. Okay, pretty plain and simple. Establishing income streams, like the income stream you get from Social Security and from what you could get from an annuity, essentially makes it so that you know those payments are coming. Okay, so that makes it much, much harder for you to outlive your funds because you know what you're going to get. There's a lot of different factors that go into the calculation of an annuity amount. I know two are the same actually. And it depends on a lot of different things. First of all, it's going to depend on how much money out of your account, out of your wallet, you're going to use to purchase this annuity payment. Okay. And then there's a lot of other things. We're going to look at your mortality table, some actuarial data on that. We're going to, if you have a spouse on there that is a certain age, their age gets taken into consideration. Some of the beneficiary options like that too. We have to take the age of that person into consideration as well as their mortality tables. There's a different factor rate that's used in the calculation of each one of these. And the factor rate, honestly, you can think about that one like X in an equation, okay? It's a rate that doesn't change normally, or will give you an idea of what that's going to be, and that's applied in this huge formula. Essentially, it's like a big spreadsheet we use to calculate that monthly amount, okay? Which option you pick is also a factor. Now, cash balance tier 1 has a 7.75 rate. That's in statute. Tier 2 has a 7.3% rate. That's going to go down. 2 years ago, we got actuarial data that said be kind of better if we can move this down a little bit, keep the plan better funded. Okay, that's why the reasoning for that. And it's going to go down 0.1%, or yeah, it's 0.1% until it reaches 7. Okay, that's for tier 2 annuities. The next one we're going to talk about is the factor for DC annuities. If you're a DC member and you decide to take an annuity, that rate is actually generated in January of every single year and will change on a yearly basis. And basically, we use the rate that's given to us by the Pension Benefit Guarantee Company, which gives us federal rates, yeah? And then we add 0.75% to that rate, and that's the rate that we get for that year. So in January of 2022, that rate was 3.12%. The year before that was 2.11%. The year before that, it was 1.87%. Okay, I can't speculate on what that's going to be this year. I have no idea. It could go up, it could go down. But that rate that we get in January, it applies to every single person that takes an annuity for that year. So the 2022 rate is going to apply to everybody that takes annuities, DC members who take annuities, from January of this year until December of this year. And in January, we'll get a new rate. Something important about this to note as well, one of the factors that can affect an annuity monthly amount pretty big is whether or not you want COLA. And everybody knows what a COLA is, right? It is a cost of living adjustment. We hear this one in the news all the time because Social Security just released their COLA again. And their COLA is based on the CPI. Okay, so that's based on actual inflation or that inflation gauge. Ours is only 2.5% and it stays 2.5%. It was meant to be a good hedge against inflation a few years ago. It's great, except for when inflation is like, 8% or something. So yeah, maybe not that great. But if you decide that you want an annuity that has a COLA on it, that monthly amount is going to start a little bit lower than if you were to choose a monthly annuity without COLA. That monthly annuity without COLA is going to stay the same for the life of the annuity. We're going to give you an amount. We're going to say this is the amount that we'd pay you monthly, and then that stays the same for the entire life of that annuity. If you choose to have a with COLA annuity, that amount is going to start a little bit down, and then it's going to go up 2.5% every single year. It'll stair step up just a little bit. Okay. Now, at a certain point in time, the COLA that COLA amount is going to overcome that static amount for the just plain option without COLA. But it's going to take a bit of time to get up to that. I'm going to show you numbers for this in a minute, okay? But that's just an important thing to kind of keep in mind. Also, something that you want to keep in mind, you remember the example that I started out with where I say, okay, you've got a wallet and you take this much money out of your wallet to purchase an annuity. Essentially, what you're purchasing is a little ATM that's going to sit in your living room and spit out a check every single month. Okay, you're going to know what that amount is. We're going to tell you when you purchase it. But when you purchase it and you fill out that distribution application to tell us which option you want and what you'd like to do, effectively that money has come out of your wallet. Okay, you're purchasing something entirely different. So your ATM over here, it doesn't have a rate of return. But then again, you don't have to worry about that kind of thing because you know exactly what the payment's going to be that's coming to you. Okay. When you sign that distribution application, that's a financial contract. Please understand the distribution application when you fill it out, because this annuity, if you pick an option that's an annuity option, if that's attractive to you, and who knows, maybe it will be, maybe it won't be. But if you pick that and you sign that application and you establish an effective date, which that's the first payment, you're locked into that. That's a financial contract, okay? It's important that you understand it, and that if you don't, you access the resources that help you understand it. There are videos all over the website that explain the annuity options. If you have questions about specific options, you can absolutely call the call center. You can run benefit estimates to understand exactly which one of those options is going to be best for you and that you enjoy. Let's talk annuity options. This is one of my favorite things to talk about because I like annuities essentially. If we look at this list, yeah, all the lists on this slide, from life only all the way down to non-spousal joint and survivor, and I'm really going to stress this, all the options from life only all the way down to non-spousal joint and survivor are going to provide for you, the member, a check every month for the rest of your life. I'm going to say it again. This one is really important to get through your head. All of the options from life only to non-spousal are going to give you, the member, a check every month for the rest of your life. Okay? We're going to talk about designated period too, but I want you to kind of keep that separate because even though it's on this slide, those end. And I don't want anybody to get confused about that. Okay, so I'm sure you're looking at this right now and you're like, well, Heather, if all of these options from life only down to non-spousal joint survivor provide me with a check for the rest of my life, how are they different? Well, I'm super glad you asked. They're different in the probability that we will pay a death benefit under each one and to whom we will pay that to. Okay, so with that in mind, let's talk about them. Life only, and this is Heather's preference. I like things that are exactly what they say they are. Life only is just that. It is an annuity payment that will come to you monthly for your life only. With this one, you don't get to put down a beneficiary when you sign up for this on the distribution application because there is no distribution, there is no payout. Once you end, the annuity ends. It's done. Okay. I also try and give people financial scenarios in which these options may work best for them, mainly because I'm not allowed to give you advice. Okay. But I can say that in this scenario, this may work. Okay. With the life only option, that's usually a good option for people who, don't have a lot of debt going into retirement. They're going to take care of their kids as far as getting them some money after they die with something like life insurance instead, because that's one of the only tax advantage ways to do it in the state of Nebraska if you're going to leave money to your children. With this one, it maybe you need the highest monthly paying option because life only almost always is the highest monthly paying option. Okay. Because we're not going to pay a death benefit. And if we're not paying a death benefit under that, you're going to get a little bit more. And you're going to see that probability play out in all these options. But because this has zero probability that we're going to pay a death benefit under it, it's almost always the highest paying monthly amount. That is life only. Now, with that said, sometimes this scenario does play out where you've worked for the state or the county for 30 years and you've put into the plan quite a bit of money and you take that entire account when you do your distribution, 100% of your account, you get a life only annuity. Let's just do a number. Let's say 600,000. I have $600,000 in my account. I'm going to move that into a life only annuity. Hooray. So I'm enjoying retirement and I go to my mailbox to get my second monthly payment. This is my second month of being paid under that annuity. And I'm not quite paying attention because I'm super excited. I'm going to get this check and then I'm headed right to the bait shop. And then I've got a weekend at the lake planned. I'm going to do some fishing. Okay. But I'm not paying attention to where I'm looking and getting my stuff out of the mailbox. And suddenly I get hit by well, in the seminars, we say school bus. But that's no offense to any of the great bus drivers that we have in the state. I got bus driver family out north. So I think they're pretty great. But sometimes you get hit by a school bus and you pass away. At that point in time, there is no payout because life only doesn't provide for a death benefit option. And sometimes that bothers people. They say, well, what happened to my $600,000? Well, what happened was you took that money out of your wallet when you signed that distribution application. What happens to it is it goes into a great big bucket. Okay. And that great big bucket is invested by the Nebraska Investment Council. Okay. And then all of the annuities that are getting paid out of NPERS get paid from investment returns. A lot of people think that it's their contributions or the employer match that does that. Nope. Almost all annuity payments are investment returns. And because we're an institutional investor, we could do this on a much bigger scale. And the investment council actually has a very good long-term retirement strategy for our investing. Essentially, that's kind of a guarantee that that money is going to be there. So yes, it's sad that you only got 2 payments from your annuity and passed away. But that money is still in that big bucket. You used to purchase it. Everybody else getting annuities and can say thank you. For some people, that's still really, really going to bother them. And that's okay. I mean, I totally understand that myself. If that's you, then you might want to look at the modified cash refund option instead. Because the modified cash refund option, what that does is guarantee that you're going to get out of the annuity at least what you put into it. Okay. What do I mean? Well, when you start your annuity, when you take that money out of your wallet and purchase the annuity, you're going to use a certain amount of money. Okay. You designate that. And we're going to keep track of that. And then you're going to start getting monthly payments after that. Okay. We're going to keep track of that too. And then when you pass away, we do a little equation. We take that initial amount that you used to purchase your annuity minus the amount that you received in benefit payments, and that's going to equal what we pay to your beneficiary designated on file. Okay, so let's do another number examples on this one. I like that one. Let's just say $60,000 was what I used to purchase my annuity amount. Okay, and then I started receiving payments, and I received $10,000 in payments, let's say. Okay, so $60,000 is what I used to purchase my annuity minus $10,000 in benefit payments equals $50,000 that would go to my beneficiary designated on file. Okay, so that's a good option to ensure that you're at least going to get out of the annuity, or your beneficiaries would, what you put into it. Okay, now with that said, sometimes this scenario plays out where you spend $60,000 to get your annuity, and then you receive $80,000 in benefit payments and pass away. At that point in time, we've overcome our initial amount that we paid for our annuity in payments that came to us. Is there going to be a payout to our beneficiary on file? Nope, because we've overcome that amount. Okay, so that's important to know. The next one we're going to talk about is the period certain and continuous options. This one can get a little confusing for people because it's associated with some numbers. And when you sign up for your annuity, you're going to be able to pick whether you want a 5, 10, or 15-year option for this one. But I don't want you to think about it in terms of 5, 10, or 15 years. I want you to think about it in terms of monthly payments. Okay? How many monthly payments are there in 5 years? 60. There are 60 monthly payments in 5 years. That means there's 120 payments in 10 years and 180 payments in 15 years. Okay? And the reason that's important is because how the period certain and continuous works, you have picked your certain period at the beginning. And let's say that I pick a 5-year period, so a 60 payment period. If I pass away during that certain period that I've picked, the remaining monthly payments in that period would go to my beneficiary designated on file. Okay, so if my certain period is 5 years or 60 monthly payments, let's say that I receive 48 monthly payments and that I pass away. How many monthly payments are going to be paid to my beneficiary designated on file? 12. The last 12 months of payments. So that last year of payments is going to be paid to my beneficiary designated on file. And to break this one down just almost even further, let's just say that I am getting a $900 a month benefit. And I have 3 beneficiaries designated on file. If I receive 48 monthly payments of $900 and then pass away, then for those last 12 monthly payments, each of my 3 beneficiaries would receive $300 a month for the last 12 months. Okay. Now, with this one, I like to talk about an example. I knew a retiree who went into retirement with a goal, a big goal, and their goal was to make sure that if they passed away, that the mortgage would be able to be paid off. When they retired, they had 15 years left to pay on the mortgage. So they picked the 15-year option because they looked at the monthly amount when they did their benefit estimates, and that covered it. That covered the mortgage payment. So they were like, okay, we'll do this. Well, that person started their benefit like in the 80s. And then not only did they live past their 15-year period, they lived 13 years past that. So the reason that I get to tell you this story is because it was my grandma, okay? So I know she paid that house off herself. That 15-year period, she got a check every single month. Hooray, from this plan. But then she lived 13 years past that, 13 years past when there would be any kind of death benefit payment, and was still receiving a check when she was 98 every month for your whole life. Remember that. Any option from life only all the way down to non-spousal joint survivor. Even if you're outside of that period that we're talking about now, where a death benefit would be paid, or if you've overcome the initial amount that you used to purchase your annuity, if you've got modified cash, it's still going to pay you a check every month for the rest of your life. So that's important, okay? The next thing that we're going to talk about is beneficiary flexibility. Modified cash and period certain both offer you beneficiary flexibility. That's very important. It's going to be important to some people. Some people, they're not going to care. But what it does is it enables you to be able to change your beneficiaries designated on file after you started receiving payments. Okay? Because maybe you have that Thanksgiving. You know the Thanksgiving that I'm talking about, that Thanksgiving that makes you reach for a beneficiary change form. Who knows? But some people might need that. Okay. So it allows you to change your beneficiaries after you've started receiving payments if you have beneficiary flexibility. It also allows you to have multiple beneficiaries. Let's say that you want to have your 5 grandkids or your 3 nieces and nephews on as your beneficiaries. You can do that if you have beneficiary flexibility. Also, let's say that you want to maybe have as a beneficiary an entity like a church or a charity. You can do that, but you have to have beneficiary flexibility in order to do that. Okay? So, modified cash and period certain offer you beneficiary flexibility. And it looks like we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I've just been talking your ear off. So, what we're going to do is take our 10-minute break here. And so, I'm going to stop and I'm going to ask if there's any questions, and then we'll take our 10-minute break. Jared, did we have any questions?
We do, and I think it's a great place to end for you to mention real fast. The question is, what if your beneficiary is a trust rather than an individual?
Oh, that's a very good question, actually. Um, Most of the time, you can put down a trust, but we're going to talk about an option where you can't, like the non-spousal joint survivor allows you to elect a beneficiary. You can't put a trust down for that one. But for most of the other, if you have modified cash period certain, you can put an entity like a trust down. You just have to make sure that you provide trust paperwork listing a trustee that we can contact. Um, you could do that now as well if you want to have that on your account. These are annuity options. So you're going to get, when you sign up for an annuity, when you fill out your distribution application, you should fill out a new beneficiary form at that point in time as well. But for right now, if you don't know who your beneficiaries are, if you'd like to have a trust on as one of your beneficiaries, you absolutely can, while you're still actively employed too. The beneficiary form is, of course, on our website, but there you go. Good question. Okay, we've talked about life only as far as an annuity option, right? That's the one that pays you a check every month for the rest of your life. That's it. When you die, or it ends, essentially. Modified cash, that's the one where we look at the initial amount that you spent minus what you got in benefit payments equals what's paid to your beneficiary designated on file. And with the period certain and continuous options, we discussed that if you pick a certain period of payments, like that payment period, and pass away during that point in time, then the remaining payments in that period are paid to your beneficiaries designated on file. Okay. Then we talked a little bit about beneficiary flexibility and what that means and how it applies to the modified cash and period certain options. Okay. So We talked about beneficiary flexibility right then because I like to talk about opposites of topics. The next thing we're going to talk about is the joint and survivor option. And this one locks you in with one beneficiary. You got to guess who that beneficiary might be if it's called joint survivor? Well, it's your spouse. And more importantly, it's the spouse that you're married to at the time you establish your effective date. And you know, if she says it like that, it's important. With this one, how it works is you, the member, sign up for this option and you start getting a certain amount monthly. Okay. When you fill out your distribution application, you get to pick a percentage, 50, 75, or 100%. And when you pass away, that's the percentage of your monthly benefit that will be paid to your surviving spouse every month for the rest of their lifetime. Okay, let's do an example of this one. Let's say that I get $1,000 a month. Okay, and I have the 75% joint and survivor annuity. If I pass away, then my husband would receive $750 a month for the rest of his lifetime. Okay, that's how that one works. But sometimes your spouse may predecease you. I'm a pretty tough bird to live with. Let's say my husband predeceases me. If that happens, I, as the member, I'm still going to get my monthly payment for my entire life. There is just no beneficiary that would be paid anymore. So it would function a lot like a life only because it would be only for my life. Because my spouse that, you know, was there when we established our effective date is essentially gone. Okay. The same thing happens if you get a divorce. Even if you get remarried, you are not allowed to put a new spouse on as the beneficiary on this one. You're tied to that spouse that was with you when you established your annuity. Okay, your effective date. Now, non-spousal joint survivor functions a lot the same way, but with that one, you're allowed to pick that beneficiary. And it can be any one living human being. Any one living human being, okay? Anybody. You pick that one living human being. But the reason that I say like that one living human being, is because this one can't be a trust, okay? That's very important to note. There's also only one percentage associated with this one, and that's 50%. You don't get to pick anything other than that. They will simply receive 50% of your benefit for the rest of their lifetime. Okay. So with this one, I had a very nice lady who was going to take this option, and we were talking about it. And I said, "Hey, do you have your, one living human being picked out for this one?" And she said, "Yeah, I think I'm going to make it my granddaughter. She just turned 19." And I said, "Oh, that's wonderful." Now, I do have to remind you, you get to pick that one beneficiary, right? But at the same time, when we calculate what your monthly annuity amount is going to be, we have to take into consideration the probability that we might have to make a lifetime monthly payment to that person. And if that person is 19 years old, that's a long time that we might potentially be making that payment. With that in mind, what do you think that's going to do to grandma's monthly benefit? Well, it's going to bring it way, way down. Okay. So that will affect the monthly amount. Just something to keep in mind. Will that change who you're going to put down as a beneficiary? I doubt it. But it's something good to consider. Okay. And just something to be aware of. The next one we're going to talk about are the designated periods. Okay. And the reason that I try and make a stop and be like, okay, I need you to think about this in an entirely different direction now. Okay. Because when I started, I said all the ones from life only down to non-spousal joint survivor do what? They pay you, the member, a check for your entire life. Okay. They're only different in, the probability there's going to be a death benefit payment and how that death benefit payment is going to be paid to your beneficiary. Okay. That's it. But if you choose a designated period option, then the important thing you need to know about that is that it ends. Okay. All the rest of the ones we talked about, they're going to pay you for your whole life. If you pick a designated period, it will pay you for that period, and that is it. Okay. The reason that I hit that one so hard is because the designated period that you're offered under that, you can pick a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, or 20-year. Okay. And what that essentially is just taking that amount of money and chopping it up over that period and paying it to you. Okay. With these, there was a point in time where I've taken calls and, I was trying to be helpful. And the lady says, "Hey, Heather, can you check my account? I have the 5-year period certain and continuous, and I didn't get a check this month for some reason. Can you have a look at that and see what's going on?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I can." So I pull up your application and I have a look at it, and you didn't pick the 5-year period certain and continuous. You picked the 5-year designated. So now there's no check coming at all. And I get to be the one to tell you that because you didn't understand your application. That makes a real hard day for me. I don't ever want to take that call again. So I'm very adamant in the fact that you take a second and understand this when you fill it out. Okay? Because there's nothing that I could do for that lady. It was pretty terrible. So understand what you're picking. Am I saying these don't work? No, no, no. I would never say that. I know someone who absolutely has a strategy that's going to make it so that they pick a designated period. Somebody who is going to retire at 55, right after 55, and they were going to sign up for a 10-year designated period because they needed a certain amount monthly, and those designated periods, because they end, they are higher in their monthly payments. Okay, so they picked that one because they needed a certain amount, and they're going to run that all the way up until they hit 65, so they can apply for Medicare and start taking their Social Security benefit. And 65 for them was full retirement age. So take their full retirement age Social Security payout, and they were going to live on that. So they didn't care that it went their whole life. They just wanted it to be for that 10-year period. So that was important to them. And this will, I mean, for some people, the designated periods are going to be great options. But I really have to stress that if you pick one of those, they end. Okay? That's all. That's my 2 cents. Okay? There you go. We wanted to be able to give you some examples that you could look at on this so that you can understand how these function. So here's some sample annuities and we ran the estimates through our benefit estimator. You can get these numbers for yourself, but this is for somebody who is age 65 and they use $60,000 to purchase the annuity. Okay. We ran it for a defined contribution member, and then we ran one with COLA and without COLA, and then with COLA. Okay. So no COLA, with COLA. And then we ran for somebody who was cash balance tier 1. So no COLA amounts. And in the next column, you see the one that is with the COLA. That's the one that's going to have that, after a year, that's going to go up 2.5%. And the next year goes up 2.5% again, and again, and again, and again. But that no COLA column here, that's a static number. That's going to stay the same for the life of the annuity. Okay. So you can see here the probability of a death benefit, how that kind of plays into the numbers a little bit. You can see life only, that's the most monthly. But honestly, modified cash is not far behind. And sometimes that is going to be a fairly close number, depending on how much you kind of spend to establish your annuity. Okay. You can also see that as we increase the probability of a death benefit payout, like with the 15-year, that's a much longer time that we're going to pay out a death benefit. That's a little less monthly than if you only pick the 5-year. Okay. You can also see how that plays into if we're going to pay 100% of your benefit to your surviving spouse, or if we're only going to pay 50% of that benefit to your surviving spouse. But it's important that you see numbers, and it's important that you get numbers. So I'm going to have Jeremy walk you guys through our benefit estimator.
All right, if you haven't been to our estimator before, it's a really great tool for you just to get some good ideas about what you might look at receiving from an annuity when you retire. If you go to our homepage, npers.ne.gov, you can click on where it says member info, and there at the bottom it's going to say benefit estimators on the bottom of that menu. You don't have to have an account or anything to use this at all, so you won't need to sign in or anything like that. But when you do click on the button, it's going to take you to this page here, and this page you basically have to click this little box there at the bottom that is basically telling you that I understand. You're telling us that you understand that we're getting an estimate and not a quote here. And then you just, after you click on that box, you'll go ahead and click on the plan that you're in, whether it's this county or the state. And it's going to take you to this page here where you're going to enter your birth date, the date you are estimating that you're going to terminate your employment, the month that you want to begin your benefits, and then when you begin plan participation. And then it's going to ask you here, estimated amount you want to convert to a monthly annuity. And this is where I would encourage you to like play with this tool. Don't just use it once. Just use it over and over again. If you're someone who maybe has, let's say you have $250,000 in your account, put in 225,000 here, put in 200, put in 250, put in 175. Do all sorts of different estimates to see what different amounts will get you as far as an annuity. We're not keeping track of you using this. Nobody's keeping any of that information. There is no reason to not just use this over and over again just to get a good idea of what it is you would be looking at receiving when you retire. Then you're going to put in here what kind of retirement will you be taking, whether that be the cash balance with or without a COLA, or the DC with or without a COLA, and then the beneficiary type and your beneficiary's date of birth. And then it's going to ask you if you want to calculate your taxes. You're welcome to do that if you want to. I usually tell, we don't know anything about the rest of your income, so a lot of times that tax might not be extremely accurate, based on other income you might have coming in, but you're welcome to do that if you want to. And then you just click on calculate your estimate. That's going to take you to this next page here that's going to give you calculations for each one of those options Heather just talked about, along with the designated period, 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. A couple of things about this page is, one, where that says like option 1, life only, option 2, modified cash refund, those are links. So if you get to using our estimator and maybe forget what some of these options do for you, you can click on those and it'll take you to the place in our handbook that explains what those options are. I also want to tell you that if you are going to use this estimator and do more than one estimate for more than one amount, up there at the top where it says your estimate and your information, those two different tabs, if you want to go back and put a different amount in, go click on your information. Don't click on the back browser for your or the back button for your browser. If you click that back button, it's going to take you back to a blank estimator, and you're going to have to enter your birthday, your date, when you want to retire, all that stuff again. But if you just click on your information, it'll take you back to the page of stuff that you just filled out. And so all you have to change there is the amount. And at the bottom of this page here that has your estimate, you're going to see basically it's going to give you sort of like a receipt. It's just telling you that these estimates that you have here, that's based on this information that you gave us with the account balance and everything that you put in there. We do have a print button at the bottom of these pages. So, something we say a lot is that if you want to have a perfect retirement plan, really the only way is to know when you're going to die. I think then the next best way to have the best one possible is just to be armed with a lot of information when you start making these decisions. So like I say, run this estimator a bunch of times, print them out, take a stack of papers with you to your financial advisor or your accountant or estate planning attorney or whatever it is, your spouse. Just be armed with all this information so that you can make the best decision for you. But that's the benefit estimator. Again, it's pretty easy to use. And I will turn it back over to you, Heather.
Now you have homework. Okay. Now I want you to go and use the benefit estimator. And when you do this, when you sit down and start doing retirement planning, I'm going to tell you, you need to go to that kitchen table, that breakfast bar, that coffee table. Go to that place where you sit down with the people who are stakeholders in this. Okay. Basically, people who might be financially dependent upon you. Have a good, hard talk with your kids about what their plans are. Do they plan on living in the state? Are they going someplace else? Knowing the big picture or your big financial picture is going to help you do better planning. That's just plain and simple. Because there's a lot of things that go into retirement planning these days. You know, if your retirement's going to be a cheap retirement, like you've paid off your house and you intend to simply stay where you are and just wake up late and go around and do some gardening, that's not a particularly expensive retirement. But then again, if you're going to take that 180-day all the way around the world cruise that you've been putting off for years and years, yeah, you're going to need to have funds prepared to do that. If you're going to be a snowbird, if you have kids that live on both coasts and you're going to go see all your grandchildren all the time, that takes funds. So you have to prepare for that. You have to think about this. Look at your debt to income ratio. Look at your insurance needs. You have life insurance. How long has it been since you looked at the beneficiaries on that? You have a health insurance right now. What are you doing for health insurance when you retire? Because let me tell you, one of those things about life is the fact that I don't know anybody who has gotten healthier as they've gotten older, myself included. So we have to take that into consideration when we're doing our retirement planning. Really take a good hard look at your family health histories. I mean, on my dad's side, I've got, cancer up and down, and then on my mom's side, it's heart disease and diabetes. I need to watch for certain things. This plays into my life expectancy, my health insurance needs. Okay. So that will also play a role in your decisions when it comes to planning for retirement. Do you need to set up those income streams, or do you need to have more access to liquid cash? There's just a lot of things to consider when you sit down. Do you have people that are financially dependent upon you? Are you the bank of mom and dad? Because that could be a big deal. In retirements, when we look at setting up our income streams, maybe we have people who are financially dependent upon us that we need to provide for in certain different ways, or that we want to provide for in certain different ways. All of those are retirement decisions. And I can't stress enough to you to sit down and discuss that with the people in your life, because that's important. Most financial planners, and believe it or not, I actually do quite a bit of research for these presentations. Most financial planners at this point in time, at least the trend, is to get you up to an 80 to 85% salary income replacement in retirement. What does that actually mean to you? Well, think about what you're making now. Yeah. And now I want you to think about 80% of that. You got a number? That's what a financial planner is going to try and get you to with different income streams. So you remember, and I don't know if Jeremy mentioned it like outright when he was talking, but Social Security is only designed to replace a certain portion of your income. That portion is like 35 to 40%. So we made something, we call this one the pig handout, but essentially it's a nest egg handout. And with the nest egg handout, what that one shows is and it's all the way at the top because I posted it as well, but I wanted you to make sure that you've had a look at this. It says Nest Egg Handout. So go over to the chat and click on the link for Nest Egg Handout. We made this one specifically to show to you kind of how financial planners these days are going to sit down and run some numbers with you through their software. Okay, because we sat down with a financial planner to look at this one. There's a chart at the very bottom of this handout. Basically, that chart is, okay, somebody retires at age blank, and they intend to live to age blank. So we picked two numbers. We said somebody retires at age 60, and they intend to live to age 90. That's what they're going to do. If they would like to maintain a $30,000 a year lifestyle, then essentially what they're going to need is $2,500 per month. If we count on Social Security paying 40%, that's $1,000 a month. That's on the high end of Social Security, but $1,000 a month. So now what we're trying to do is find $1,500 per month to supplement that, so we can get to $2,500 a month. This gives us $30,000 a year. Okay. Now, per the handout, if you take a look at that chart, that with Social Security figured in already, says that we're going to need to saved, you ready? $496,000. It's a big number, but let's see what the plan does as far as providing something like that. For our defined contribution members, if they were to sign up for an annuity, and it would be a life only option that they would pick, so no death benefit under that one. And age 65, with the rate for this year, which is 3.12%, they would need to use $324,000 from their account to secure that monthly amount of $1,500.46. Okay, which we add to our $1,000 from Social Security and get our $2,500 a month. That'll give us a $30,000 a year lifestyle. Okay, now cash balance tier 1, if we would purchase the same annuity, this is the same life only, so no death benefit, at age 65 with a COLA. Both of these are with a COLA, by the way. So this $1,500 a month is going to go up 2.5% every year. But here is where you can really see that enhanced annuity factor. Do you remember how I was telling you that annuity factor is like X in a formula, essentially? This one is an enhanced annuity rate. And that means that if your cash balance, you're going to have to spend a little less out of your account to get that amount. So if your cash balance tier 1, you'd have to spend $207,100 to get that $1,500.60 per month to add to your $1,000 from Social Security to secure you $2,500 a month and get you to a $30,000 a year lifestyle. Now, when we show this slide to people, they freak out a little bit, okay? It's expected. 324,000, 207,000, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's a lot of money. But is it $496,000? No, it's not. So the plan can help. We do put forth options for you, okay? But I'm going to tell you the really terrible part about that handout that I just made you look at. The really terrible part about that is the handout was developed in 2016. Those numbers have not gotten better. Okay, so even though it said you might need $496,000 in 2016 to maintain a $30,000 a year lifestyle, that could be vastly different. In fact, I'm pretty positive it is in this day and age. But there's some examples of salary replacement. Okay. Let's talk annuity taxation. Okay. Remember, any payments that come out of this account to you are going to be taxed, right? So now you're looking at, well, how would annuity payment be taxed when it's coming to me? Pretty simple. Do you remember when you got your job and you filled out a W-4 form so that they could withhold taxes from your income, right, from your check. Essentially, same thing. And this slide is old news because we got guidance from the IRS that we're going to have to use their form now, the W-4P. So when you get your packet to sign up for an annuity and you'll call to get that distribution application and the paperwork you need to complete, they're going to put in a tax form, which is the W-4P. And you're going to fill that out and send it back to us. And then we're going to withhold from your annuity payments just like it's income. Okay. It's the same thing essentially, because your new job is what? Is retirement. Your new job is retirement. So if you think about it that way, it helps to kind of, okay, well, that's how that's going to be taxed. It's just like your income. So there you go. Disability retirement. Disability retirement with us, I don't go into too much, mainly because if you need to access disability retirement, what that actually is simply giving you access to your retirement account prior to age 55 and then still calling it retirement. Okay, so you remember the difference between your retirement and termination? Means essentially you've terminated, but we're going to call it retirement and gives you access to funds that way. Okay, so you know early withdrawal penalties and things like that on there. But there is kind of a process to walk through in order to access that. And it does require a medical examination and, going through some approval things. If you need that, absolutely fine. Our criteria for disability is different than Social Security's. So we have had people who qualified for Social Security disability but did not qualify for our disability, at least through the retirement plan. So important thing to note, if this is something you need to access, please call the office. We have someone who walks through the process with you and basically we'll get your exams all scheduled and things like that. Okay. So that's disability retirement. Death before retirement and termination. So what time period are we actually talking about? Well, we're talking about what happens if something at lunch is really, really bad. Today, essentially, before you have ceased employment. So you're actively employed. If you have a non-spousal beneficiary on your beneficiary form, then they can do a withdrawal, which means that they could do a lump sum withdrawal. They could do a rollover from your account. If you're DC, then that person would have access to a systematic withdrawal. But all of this has to be done and a full distribution of the account has to occur within 5 years of death. And that doesn't matter if you're DC or if you're cash balance. Has to be within 5 years of death, the account is cleaned out. Okay. If you have a spousal beneficiary, they have access to the same thing, kind of. They could do a lump sum, they could do a rollover, has to be within 5 years. If you're DC, then they can also do a systematic withdrawal. But even if you're doing a systematic withdrawal, that still has to be cleaned out within 5 years. The account has to be cleaned out. Okay. Now, if you have a spousal beneficiary, then they may have the option to do the 100% joint and survivor annuity if they contact us within 180 days of your death. This is kind of a big deal. And I'm going to tell you, this one was really hard for me to understand because I was like, well, if my spouse died or if I died and then my spouse got a joint and survivor annuity, isn't the only beneficiary that they get like me? Essentially what this is it's going to be paid like a life only annuity, okay? But when your spouse asks for this, it is figured using the joint and survivor mortality and actuarial tables, okay? That's why it's called 100% joint survivor. They don't really get to put on like another spouse. It's just figured using those tables, okay? Death after retirement or termination. So this is what happens, after you have ceased employment. These are the options after death. If you still have money in the account, like let's say you're deferring it or you've just left it there, then it's the same as the last two slides that I just went over. Now, if you have purchased an annuity, then that death benefit is going to be paid according to the annuity option that you picked. Because if you remember, we spent a lot of time talking about the options for each one of those. So it's paid out according to whatever option you chose for your annuity. Okay. Beneficiary changes. This is an important one because we just talked about death, right? I'm going to tell you, we have a lot of state people on the call. In May, when we do open enrollment and we update our beneficiaries on Workday, are those for our retirement account? Nope, they're for our life insurance. So if you're a state employee and you're doing open enrollment and you're adjusting your beneficiaries, that doesn't apply to your retirement account. If I were checking, like if I wanted to check my beneficiaries, I would go to that statement, like the statement that you receive in the mail, or if you do it electronically, you receive it electronically, okay? But we fought really, really hard to get those beneficiaries listed for you on page 2 of your statement. So it's page 2 about around the top of it, okay? And if you have beneficiaries on file on the system, they're going to show there. Now, if your beneficiary listing is over 15 years old, they're not going to be on there because we had to switch from one computer system to another. But this is very important. If your beneficiaries were over 15 years old, like your listing, you might want to check it out. Maybe update that a little bit. Everybody has different life things that happen. People's last name changes, life events happen. It's very important that we keep up to date on that. So if you need to, you can get our beneficiary designation form from the forms page of our website. Just print that out, take a look at it. Maybe when you sit down tonight and look at all of your financial plans, maybe you need to make some changes to that form. If you do, make sure you get it notarized and send it back in. The reason that the beneficiary designation form is notarized, and this is a big one, is because we want to make sure it's you making those changes. In this day and age, it's very important that we try and prevent fraud. Sometimes we do that in real low tech ways, like notaries, making sure that it's you who is updating beneficiaries on your account. There are no bigger payments, okay, that leave this office than death payments. They're the biggest ones. So make sure that those are going to the people you want them to go to. You worked very hard for this retirement money. We want to ensure it gets to where you need it to go. Okay. So keep those updated. I usually update mine every 3 to 5 years. Okay. That's just a personal thing, but it's also kind of an industry standard practice thing as well if you've done any estate planning. So take a look at them. Just make sure they're the people that you want them to be. Oh, and this is an important one too. If you have, I'm a cash balance member, but I also got into the DCP plan. And I got into the DCP plan about 2 years after I'd started my mandatory plan. So I'd been working for the state for 2 years. And then I was like, I should be involved in that DCP thing, right? So I signed up for a DCP account. Now, I was under the impression that my mandatory plan, my state plan beneficiaries, would simply apply to my DCP account. That is not true. So I know that if you're involved in DCP, you got a second statement. You got 2 statements, one for your mandatory account and one for your DCP. Same rules apply. If you open that DCP statement and you don't see anybody listed as your beneficiary on it, you need to get that form and put beneficiaries on there. That's important. They don't automatically apply. Okay. So there you go. That was it. And that was something that, it took me a minute to realize as well. So important to know. Now, if you want to list a beneficiary on there, you certainly can. You can list an estate if you like. You can list a trust. I do ask, of course, if you're doing that, send in some trust documentation for us. It's just easier to pay. If you have a springing or testamentary trust, that is basically your will, just makes a trust at a certain point in time, it would be nice to have the name of somebody we can contact for that. Okay. This is our beneficiary designation form. You can see right here that there is a plan type box in the right corner. At least I think that's the right one you're looking at. Yep. It says the 6 plans right now that we administer. Now, you'd be so surprised. There are a lot of people that are in multiple plans. I myself am in multiple plans because on this one, I could check the box for state and I could also check the box for DCP. So if I wanted my beneficiaries to apply to both of those plans, all I have to do is check those boxes to make sure that those apply. Okay? And I know, just so you know, ha ha ha, we had somebody in a seminar who was literally in 4 plans. Like I think they'd been in the school plan, the county plan, the judge's plan, and the patrol plan at some point in time. And so they had all those accounts. And you can have beneficiaries for that just by checking all those boxes. Now, you see here where there's about 5 lines in the primary beneficiary box. And over at the side here on the margin, there's a 0.00. That's actually to help get you to 100%. Because if you're listing multiple primary beneficiaries, you need to put down the percentages that equal 100%. So don't just put down 3 beneficiaries and then put 33.33 for all of them, because that's not 100%. That's 99.99. It's not going to work. One of those beneficiaries needs that 0.01 extra. And let me tell you, it's normally less than $1, and it doesn't mean that you loved them any less. Okay, I've paid these, but you need to make sure it's 100%. Okay, so you see that there's 5 lines there. What happens if you have 6 children? Are you going to have to pull one to the side? I'm sorry, Jennifer, you just didn't make the cut this year. No, we got you covered. We have the supplemental form. That is actually the back of the form. So you can list as many beneficiaries as you like. And I've seen people that filled out the front, the back, and then had another supplemental form for even more. Somebody listed their, 14 grandchildren and then their 4 favorite charities on there. You can do what you want. Just make sure they all total 100%. That's all I ask. Reemployment. So reemployment, essentially, it involves some things we've already talked about. You remember when I said the IRS says you have to do one thing to access your retirement funds. What was it? You have to stop working. You must cease employment to access funds from your retirement account. Okay? But as we know, the state of Nebraska is a huge employer, isn't it? It's got a lot of different agencies under that umbrella. And what I'm talking about is like, okay, so corrections is part of the state, and transportation, and DHHS, and just revenue, and NPERS, and so many places are part of the state retirement plan. Okay. When we talk about reemployment, what we're talking about essentially is coming back into the plan. Same thing goes for counties, though. Like, let's say you mow lawns in Custer County. You can't just go mow the lawn in Franklin County and get paid by them. They're in the same plan. They, it's the same retirement plan. So the IRS is so upset. I don't want to say upset, but they're nitpicky about it. They're so nitpicky about this whole you have to stop working before you can access funds that they actually give us a definition of what a bona fide termination from service is. And that is that you're not anywhere near the plan. You've ceased employment and you have 120 days from your date of termination, your last day of work, that starts a clock. And that 120 days has to be satisfied where you're not coming back into the plan. You don't work for the plan for you to access your funds. Okay. So that's kind of an important thing there. You need to have that bona fide termination of service if you're going to take funds from your retirement plan, and really literally any point in time. Like whether you take funds out or not, don't come back into the plan for 120 days so that you have a bona fide termination from service. The IRS gets real nitpicky about it. So there you go. That's reemployment. We're going to finish it up here, guys. And I'm not going to give you a third break because literally 15 minutes and we're done. Okay. I want to talk to you about DCP, mainly because I already talked to you about salary income replacement examples, right? So we looked at that and we said, okay, we're trying to get up to 80 to 85% of what we're making now. And that's replaced by Social Security and income streams that we've set up. But I know that when we go through those examples and look at that pig handout, there's a lot of people on the other side of this screen that are panicking a little bit. They're like, I'm getting towards retirement and I'm not close to this. I don't have enough saved. My time horizon is super short for when I'm going to need that money. Well, I always suggest people take a look at the deferred compensation plan. I really like it. I mean, it's opinion. I really like it. I'm involved in it. Mainly because I'm a cash balance member. Okay, so I don't get to make my own investment decisions for my mandatory plan. And sometimes that's kind of an oh, thank God. And sometimes that's, I really wish I had a little bit more involvement in that. So for me to get more involved, I was like, I don't know anything about investing. I'm going to get into this deferred compensation plan. And this is where I'm going to learn about it. This is a voluntary plan. It is a 457 plan. So much like your mandatory plan is a 401A, as in Apple, this is a 457 plan. So if I wanted to understand a little bit better, I might type that into Google and be like, hey, what can I do with a 457 plan? But it's a voluntary plan. You don't have to participate in this one if you don't want to, but you can. And essentially, it's another one of those great things that I like because it is exactly what it says it is. It is deferring, so putting aside compensation, your compensation, what comes out of your check. Okay. And it's tax deferred, which means you're taking it out pre-tax. You're not going to pay taxes at that point in time. So you take that out of your check and you put it into your 457 plan, which sometimes can actually lower your income and put you into a tax bracket that's lower down. Deferred compensation can do that. I mean, you might not put in that much, but you can. So all state employees have access to the 457 plan that we're talking about here, okay? The deferred compensation plan. You can use Workday now to actually access this. And we worked really hard to make sure that you could use Workday because Workday's easier. That's where we do all of our open enrollment stuff. So you're pretty familiar with it. It's fairly easy to use. You can enroll in DCP at any point in time using Workday. Okay, it doesn't have to be just open enrollment. It can be anytime. Let's say you get done with this and you're like, oh, this was fantastic. I want to be in DCP. You can set up that to start first of next month. Now, most county employees, every county, if they don't participate in the state DCP with us, and some of them do, then if they don't, you can ask your payroll person, hey, who administers our DCP? And they will tell you. Sometimes it's a local person in the county, like in an Edward Jones office or in a Raymond James office or something like that. And they will be administering that DCP. So you're allowed to participate in it too. We have counties that participate in the state one. They are currently, you ready? Dodge, Gage, Greeley, Johnson, Lincoln, McPherson, York, Elkhorn, Logan, Elkhorn, Logan Valley Public Health Department, Northeast Nebraska Public Health Department, Southwest Nebraska Public Health Department, and as of last year, Hall County. Okay, they all participate in the state DCP plan. All right, so like I said, it is what it says it is. It's deferring part of your salary to a later date. And essentially what it is running a retirement account in conjunction with your mandatory plan. So because of that aspect of it, you can't access the funds in this one prior to termination. Why? Because the IRS says you can't. It's a retirement account. It's for retirement savings. So it's supposed to be a long-term vehicle, like your mandatory plan. So you don't get to access funds from either your mandatory plan or deferred comp until you cease employment. That's very important. Okay? I like this one because it comes directly out of my check. Like I don't have to bother about whether I'm going to make a payment on this or not. It just comes right out of my check. And if it's coming right out of my check, I don't even notice that it's gone. And like I said, with this one, I use this as my intro to investing. Okay, I established my investment strategy and I looked at it and I said, okay, these funds line up with my investment strategy. And I'm going to tell you, I have a very lengthy time horizon before I'm actually going to need that money. So a long time before I'm going to need that money. So my strategy is fairly aggressive. When I say that, that means that I'm willing to put up more risk for more return in this. Okay. So we had a couple people on here that have mentioned the losses they've taken on the market. Boy, do I know it. But because of that lengthy time horizon, I'm kind of not as worried about it. All right. At the same time, if you're getting close to retirement, you can put these in a very conservative fund so that you don't lose as much. But you have to understand which of those funds they are. So read that investment report. It's right there for you. Okay. We also understand that because this is long-term savings and a retirement account that you're not accessing until you cease employment, sometimes we have emergencies, okay? Sometimes you, so as an example, sometimes you have a bald tire and you take that into Walmart and you're getting it replaced and they take a look at the other 3 tires on your car and they go, oh, these are all bald. Now we can't let you out of here because you're an insurance liability and you got to replace all 4 of them. I'm not saying that's ever happened to me, but sometimes that's happened to me. And with that said, sometimes you need to stop contributing. Okay. Maybe you stop the contributions that you're putting in from your paycheck to kind of help with that financial situation that, 4 tires is going to cost you a little bit more. So you can stop it. You can, restart it a couple months down the road when you're on a better financial footing and just keep going with that if you want. I'm going to tell you, like I said, I moved positions about 5 different times within NPERS, and every single time that I got promoted essentially, I upped my contributions to DCP because I didn't miss it then. Like I was like, okay, well that's extra. I didn't need it. And now it's in my DCP account. Okay. And tax the contributions that come out of your paycheck are tax deferred. So they haven't been taxed yet. Participation in DCP only takes about $25 per month. And I get paid every 2 weeks. So essentially that's $12.50 pre-tax. And I'm going to tell you, I spent that much in a Starbucks drive-through this morning. Okay. And in my opinion, this is a much better use for that type of money. When we talk about IRAs, I didn't mention it, but the contribution cap on an IRA right now is $7,000 approximately. Okay, it's about $7,000. The contribution caps on DCP are much, much higher. you can see that for 2022, they're $20,500. And if you're over age 50, then you might qualify for some catch-up provisions, making your maximum $27,000. And I know you're like, well, Heather, where am I going to find $27,000? Like out in the parking lot? No, I get it, but we're getting there. How about this? You know that person in your office, you know, that one that's got the perfect attendance record, that when they actually retire and we have to pay out their eligible sick vacation banks, what's going to happen is our agency is going to have to redo its budget. We all know that person. And but this is a way where you might be able to take that eligible sick leave and vacation pay, back pay and comp pay might also work on this one, and move that into a deferred compensation account. Why would you do that? Why would you want to do that? Well, worst case scenario, they do the payout of your eligible sick and vacation leave to you, and it's such a big bank of time that you get pushed up into another tax bracket. What does that mean? It means you lose more of it. If you're able to roll that into a pre-tax account, then take payments from that account in retirement, maybe you're able to keep more of that in your pocket. And that's a good thing, right? That's our main goal in retirement. There you go. If you want to do that, though, we do have some special hoops that you have to jump through. I'm going to tell you these are not necessarily our hoops, nor do I love them. But the IRS says that you have to have that DCP change if you already have a DCP account established, or DCP enrollment if you're just starting a DCP account with this payment, that you have to have those forms if you're going to roll your eligible sick and vacation leave into DCP. You have to have those forms to your HR representative. Okay, so to your payroll, because this is going to be affected by your payroll. So to your HR representative, and then your HR representative has to get them to us, to NPERS, and it has to be in our hands the calendar month prior to your termination date. So if you're planning on having your last day of work be in December, then your DCP change or enrollment form needs to be through your HR to us by the end of November. And this is important. This is important to pay attention to, because all of it seems very ridiculous as far as the process goes. I mean, I think it's a little ridiculous, but not my rule, IRS rule. And we have had situations where the very nice payroll person, HR person has gotten into an accident or gone into the hospital, and something happens. And the person who has, said that they've gotten their application in, they go into the HR office, and sure enough, it's laying in a pile of paperwork and did not come to NPERS in time. There is nothing that we get to do about it. Okay, there's nothing that HR person gets to do about it. There's nothing that you get to do about it. If you miss the timelines on this, you're just out of luck. And the problem is, it's happened before. That's why I mention these scenarios to you. Most of them have happened before. So just give that payroll person just a little bit of a nudge. Hey, did you get that over to NPERS for me? I really appreciate it. Thank you. It's not tough. Just make sure you follow up on this one. Okay, there you go. DCP has the same distribution options as DC does. So I'm cash balance, right? That's my mandatory account. But maybe I want access to a systematic withdrawal. Well, I can do that with my DCP money. Hey, that's not bad. You can also do lump sums out of this one, or rollovers. You can defer it. Remember, you don't have to take it when you leave. It's invested just the way you want it to be. So there you go. But this is hey, heads up on this one. There are no early withdrawal tax penalties on DCP because it is all voluntary money. There is no employer match on this one. And with the 457 plan, you can then, it doesn't matter if you terminated or retired to the DCP plan. Okay. You can enroll in this one using Workday. If you do enroll using Workday, and you kind of have to if you're a state employee, just so you know, fill out a beneficiary form for this so that you can establish beneficiaries for it right away. And also, you're going to need to go and get yourself an emeritus account so that you can transfer to the funds that you want it to be into, because otherwise it's going to go into a life path fund. That's the default, because those funds have very low fees, and they tend to, with the rebalancing that they do, they tend to be okay default options. Okay. So if you don't want to be in that default option, then you need to put yourself into something that's more in line with your investment strategy. Okay. Health insurance. We're going to talk about this one absolutely briefly. The reason is we don't administer any kind of health insurance here at NPERS. It's not what we do. But because we like to do these webinars and give people options and get you thinking about things that might be options for you, we do talk about it. Okay, so let's have a little chat. From the ages of 55 to 65, if you're not covered by group employer health insurance, so work insurance essentially from your job, then you need to look at some private health insurance or some other health insurance alternatives. With the Affordable Health Care Act, this, ever since it came out, has a question mark on here. And the reason is because this is super politicized, and so I don't talk about it. I'm not going to get into it, but it is an option. If you are looking for health insurance, you type in Nebraska exchanges or Nebraska ACA exchanges. You put in a little bit of information and it will come up with if there are insurances available and what they are. Now, I'm going to tell you, I do know current retirees, people who have retired and who have taken health insurance via the ACA. Zero premium health insurance. So not paying any premiums, health insurance. And they really like it. Is it for everybody? I don't know. Could be. It might suit your needs. Just take a look. Okay. It's an option. Now, you may also have access to the state retiree health insurance. If you're looking at your binder materials, that second page after this slide, that's all the information DAS has given us on this retiree health insurance. If you need to access that, you'll need to direct questions to DAS. And every county, to finish up here, offers different options. Some of them may offer you retiree health insurance, some of them might not. But what they do offer differs per county. Okay, so make sure that you are, talking with your employer as far as what the options are that they offer. Okay, and that's health insurance. And that's it. That's essentially what we've got going on for, did we have any questions, Jeremy?
All right, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to go ahead and call it. Thank you again for coming. Have a good afternoon, and yeah, a good rest of your week.